How's it going, YouTube? My name is Ninja7, your favorite WoW healing content creator, and today we're going to be taking a look at all the healing specs in 10.2 and seeing which one you should main. Now, right off the jump, I'm going to give you guys a quick disclaimer, a quick rundown about what this video is going to entail. So I've seen a video similar to this one from a couple of other content creators, but we're going to take a different approach. Instead of talking about which healing spec is going to be the most fun, or which one I personally enjoy, or which one's going to be the strongest, what I plan on doing today is laying out the play style, certain play patterns, certain objectives of each healing spec so that you can make your best decision, since we all look for different things in healers. I also want to give you guys this blanket advice at the start of the video. I really think that it's best to make your decision based on raid placement. If you're looking for a top tier healer and you want to pick the right healer to play the whole entire expansion, then picking the meta mythic plus healer is a lot of times a waste of time, because if you take yourself back in time to 10.1.7 when Holy Paladin kind of erupted and blasted the mythic plus meta, think about how many people swapped at that point in time to Holy Paladin. But you really don't have a luxury of doing that when a meta erupts for raid. And the reason being is that when you pick a starting class, a class to start an expansion or a big patch with, you have all season to kind of like progress your raider IO if Mythic Plus is your main objective. But if you're raiding with your guild is going to be progging on week 1, month 1, all the way until you kill the final boss or whatever your guild's objective is. So oftentimes the class that you pick in week 1 will be the class that you're raiding for the entire tier with. And that's not always the case for Mythic Plus. You can easily swap and gear up an alt to play Mythic Plus, but it's just not as easy. You'll be a little behind the curve in raiding. So with that out of the way, like I said, we're going to be going through each healer and just talk about their play patterns in raid and Mythic Plus so that you can make your decision. And let's start off with Holy Priest. Now, Holy Priest has kind of been doom and gloom coming into 10.2, but they've kind of landed on both feet. So their tier set packs a lot of power. How it works is your holy words, these three, basically these two, the two healing ones, the spot shock heal that does a ton of spot healing, and then a nice little blanket AoE in a big circle. These will leave behind a hot on the targets that they heal, called your renew. And then those renews, every time that hot ticks, you have a chance of your next holy word not going on cooldown. So what ends up happening is that when you play something like Miracle Worker that gives you 2 charges of each of these holy words, you can spam your sanctifies to blanket a couple of renews out and then get a proc of your tier set so that your next holy word Serenity, your big spot heal, can save someone and not go on cooldown. And then you still have 2 charges, and then spot heal, save someone else, still have a charge, and then spot heal, you might still have another charge. I mean, it's kind of crazy just how many renews you get from your holy words. And it's kind of like a self-propelling engine. It's not like a perpetual cycle. However, it kind of is crazy just how many free holy words you get. And then not to mention your Prayer of Mending. Yes, you'll still be casting this, even though it doesn't really directly work with your new tier set. Every time your Prayer of Mending heals, after 50 little hot ticks of your Prayer of Mending, you're just going to go into Apotheosis for 8 seconds, which this also works with your holy words. You'll notice a pattern. You're going to be playing around your holy words a lot as a holy priest. How Apotheosis works is it resets the cooldowns of your holy words and then makes them recharge faster for the next 20 seconds, or basically 8 seconds, since in your raid build you decide to go with Holy Word Salve instead. And since I've brought up Holy Word Salve, this cooldown, this is a massive, major AoE healing cooldown. It's a 12-minute cooldown. If that lets you know just how strong this ability is, it will apply Renews, which work with your tier set, and apply Prayer of Mendings, which work with Apotheosis, to kind of let it all happen again. And Holy Word Salve, although it's a 12-minute cooldown, every time that you cast one of those healing holy words, you're going to be reducing this cooldown by 15 seconds. So as you see, you're just going to get into this pattern of holy wording, and then those holy words are going to apply renews that will allow you to keep holy wording. And as long as you weave in some Prayer of Mendings, you'll get some free Apotheosis casts that will then start the cycle anew. But outside of your holy words, these big things that you're gonna be playing around most of the time, what buttons are you pressing? Are you still this machine gun flash heal bot? Honestly, no. You get a lot of spot healing and you kind of still maintain that identity of being the spot healer from your holy word Serenity. But like I said, you just don't really cast that many flash heals. You do cast some heals during the downtime. However, what you're going to be filling the void with is your AoE heals. It's weird. It's a weird world that we live in where Holy Priest is spamming your AoE heals, but you're going to be spamming Prayer of Healing as much as you can, just getting a lot of AoE healing during that downtime whenever you're waiting on these Serenities or your Sanctities to come off cooldown. And then you're also going to be pressing Prayer of Mending to reset the cooldown and to get those free Apotheosis procs. And that's kind of what you'll be doing, what your play pattern will be like in Raid. But I know that there's been a lot of scares around the nerfs to like their raid utility. You still have PI, you can still give yourself PI just the same. But Symbol of Hope was the big talk of will this class still be meta or still be taken in like a pushing a race to world first environment. And although they've really nerfed Symbol of Hope and taken it down from 15% mana, and they've reduced the amount of time that you get taken off of your whole like the whole raid's defensives, if you think about it, this 10% mana in 10.2 will go further than the 15% mana that people were getting in 10.1.7 because every single healer used Rashox in 10.1.7, but nowadays they've really strained us on mana. So this 10% mana will be very welcome in a raid environment. So you'll be everyone's best friend. Top that off with very powerful cooldowns, and you are good to go in a raid environment. You are gonna be very powerful. And then the Mythic Plus playstyle plays very similarly. You're going to be casting Holy Word Serenity, spot healing people left and right. And the playstyle it plays very similarly. A major difference that you're not going to be taking is you don't take Salve in a Mythic Plus environment. You just straight up take Apotheosis because resetting both your charges of Holy Word Serenity, basically spot healing 2 people in your 5-man group to full health for free, basically, is a lot stronger than casting something like Holy Word Salve, which does a lot more healing in a 20-mana environment. So if you like spot healing and spamming some AoE heals, but getting free hots tacked on top of it, seeing a lot of green numbers, saving lives left and right, and having a lot of utility, then Holy Priest will probably be for you this tier. But if you want to prioritize your damage more, then Disc Priest is the way. And the good thing about picking a Priest spec to choose as your main throughout a tier is that you do have options. If you kind of grow tired of the healing spec that you choose at the beginning of a tier, then a lot of times you're just out of luck. But as a Priest, you can just swap to the other one until that one gets old. The good thing here is that Disc Priest has seen a lot of love coming into 10.2. So let's go and look at what their playstyle is going to look like. So as always, Disc Priest, you have to understand Atonement. This is a buff that your healing spells will apply to your allies, and then your damage that you do to enemies will funnel into healing for 40% amount of that damage into healing of each person with Atonement. So in a Mythic Plus environment, your main objective is just to keep Atonement on as many people, hopefully all 5 people at all points in time, but at least keeping it on your tank, and then pumping as much damage as possible into the enemies. Now, coming from Shadowlands, coming from a tier where everyone was trying to get as much healer damage as possible, I know that there are frustrations around healer damage, but that is just how this spec works. You have to apply Atonement, and then you do your healing through your damage. So you really have to optimize your damage rotation. So a good thing about Disc Priest is that it is a great spec for people who are coming from DPS specs. Like if you came from like an Affliction Warlock, then look no further than Disc Priest because it does a lot of damage, and a lot of your global cooldowns are going to be damaging spells. So how it works in a raid and a Mythic Plus environment, you're going to find a very similar build in both forms of content as of now, is you play around your Mind Bender. What is this? It's a 1-minute cooldown where you basically summon a pet to fight alongside you for 12 seconds. And as long as that pet is beside you, you yourself are going to go into Shadow Covenant, making your damaging shadow spells just hit harder. And it also converts some of your holy spells into shadow spells so that they also benefit from your Shadow Covenant. Now, I know it's not always everyone's favorite thing to play around a 1-minute cooldown, but don't worry because you will be resetting the cooldown of your Mindbender by Void Summoner, because every time that you cast Penance or Smite, you're going to reduce the cooldown of your Mindbender. So while your Mindbender's out, you're just going to be blasting damage, and that includes spamming Smite. And this is improved because your tier set actually makes your Smite hit twice. So you'll get 2 procs of this cooldown reset. So you're going to get 8 seconds off your Mindbender every time that you cast Smite. So you can play around this synergy more often, and you can line that up with your Mind Blast. So your Mind Blast is now going to apply Schism to make them weaker for 9 seconds, and then in that 9-second window, you're just going to be blasting shadow damage, a ton of damage onto that target, cleaving a ton of healing onto all of your targets with Atonement. So in a Mythic Plus environment, it's very easy to keep Atonement on everyone. You just cast Power Word Radiance, you have 2 charges of this, it applies Atonement to everyone, and you can just slam damage while Atonement's on them. But in a raid environment, it kind of lines up a bit differently. You normally don't press this as a single shot, you don't cast only 1 Radiance, you normally cast both Radiances, and then press Evangelism to extend all of your active atonements, and then start your little damage ramp. But how this plays, how Disc Priest plays, is you basically just try to lump all of your powerful buttons all into one ramp. So you're going to cast your Mind Blast to weaken your target. You're going to go into Shadow Covenant by summoning Mindbender. You're going to try to maximize or optimize, depending on which form of content you're in, the amount of atonements that you have out. And then cast Penance, cast Smite, do as much damage as you can while all of these buffs are active. Outside of that, your cooldowns are a little weird. They're weird. Now, you do have Ultimate Penitence now, which does a ton of damage, a ton of healing. You have Barrier, which just puts down a dome that gives everyone 20% mitigation while they're in it. And you have Rapture, which lets you just spam your Power Word Shield, which is normally on a short cooldown, but now you can just spam it, it's stronger. So you do have pretty versatile cooldowns. They're just not the most powerful of all the specs, but they get the job done. They all do what they're supposed to do. And then, like I said, you have the benefit of being a priest, so you still have PI as a Disc Priest, and then if you're tired of playing Discipline, you just swap to the completely different playstyle of Holy Priest. Now, moving on to Resto Shaman, I really feel for the Resto Shamans because they kind of got shafted during the PTR testing because they just were put down to a very low level and then buffed to a moderate level midway through the PTR. So there hasn't been as much testing on the current playstyle of the Shaman build. However, it works kind of like it always has. Now, Shaman, you want to spread your hot around, your Riptide, and you can do so by casting things like Primordial Wave and just getting more Riptides out on your allies. Whenever you need AoE healing, now Shamans do have a pretty strong chain heal since it got buffed. You can line up your High Tide buff, your Tidebringer buff, and then even your Unleash Life to empower your chain heal further and get a lot of AoE healing out of that. But outside of that, when you don't have Riptide and you don't have a maximum value chain heal, since it costs so much mana to cast chain heal, you do have very efficient spot healing spells, Healing Wave, and they get more efficient because you get mana back whenever these crit. You also get a lot of benefits from just doing this very simple rotation of Riptiding whenever you need to or whenever it's on cooldown, chain healing whenever you have these abilities lined up, and just spot healing in between because your spot heals are going to work with your tier set, which applies a buff to whoever you spot heal or cast chain heal on, that single target you cast chain heal on, and they're going to capture a bit of all the Riptide healing that you have on your whole raid. So you'll just get more value out of having a high Riptide count, spot healing often to apply those buffs to everyone, and then for each Riptide that you have out, you're just going to get more bonus healing from Undercurrent, and just like Holy Priest, get free procs of one of your major cooldowns, Ascendance. Now, the difference between them and Holy Priest is that they still do take Ascendance. I mean, it's a very powerful cooldown. It just duplicates all the healing you do, making it do basically 1.8 times the amount of healing. So all these modifiers, all these multipliers make your chain heals really chunk, make your Riptides go a long way, and add more bonus to your spot heals because now they effectively leave behind a hot since your Riptides are going to be funneling into them. You also still have very powerful cooldowns. Healing Tide Totem, it's not the best throughput cooldown, but it does the job. Combine that with Ascendance, you have 2 very powerful 3-minute throughput cooldowns, and then you still have the powerhouse that is Spirit Link Totem. Now, Spirit Link Totem is still not as strong as it was back in Shadowlands. It gives 10% mitigation to anyone that can stand in it, and then kind of spreads all the damage that everyone's taking. So it's still very powerful. It still has a lot of utility. The only issue is that there's still a lot of movement in this tier, meaning that you can't always just simply stack in this. So Shaman is still kind of down further on the totem pole, but speaking of totems, you do have Mana Tide Totem, which isn't the best mana return. It's not as strong as what holy priests have. However, like I said in the holy priest section, every little bit of mana return, mana control that you can provide to your party will be valuable, since mana is going to be a lot more constrained for a lot more healing specs, especially yourself. If you're casting a lot of chain heals, those add up. It adds up to a lot of mana. But all in all, this playstyle, the buttons you're pressing and the order that you're pressing them will look a lot similar to how it has in the past. Shaman is very cookie cutter. You have your spot heals, you have your chain heal, you're gonna healing rain on cooldown. Now is a great time to try them. Like I said, they aren't at the top of the raid meta, but they still perform very well in Mythic Plus, since Chain Heal can basically machine gun double cast Chain Heal with Tidebringer, can machine gun a full group up. Your spot healing gets more value, since spot healing 1/5 of a party is just better than spot healing 1/20th of a party. And you can just do a ton of damage, since you can heal people up so quickly, so easily. You have a lot of freedom for global cooldowns that are damage spells, and you still do a lot of damage. You have a lot of control with Capacitor Totem being an AoE stun. You have a knock up, an AoE knock up. You have a kick that's on a very short cooldown. So there's still a Swiss Army knife in Mythic Plus, but then in Raid, they still cast the same spells. You will be a little tighter on mana, but having Mana Tide Totem will give you a bit more value than just the healing that you yourself are doing. You'll contribute more healing to your allies by just providing them a little bit of mana. And despite what you see on any tier lists, they can get the job done. They provide a little bit of what all the other healer specs do. They provide solid throughput. They provide a little bit of mitigation through Spirit Link Totem in a way. They can save your allies with strong spot heals, or they can do solid AoE healing through Chain Heal. So they are still just a good jack of all trades, master of none, and that is totally fine. You won't see them in the S tier and tier lists, but you should also not see people rejecting a Resto Shaman into like an AOTC guild or a 5 out of 9 mythic guild. They do their job well. The playstyle is very rewarding, since you always have a very optimal button to press. It's just different at certain times. So if you're into that, into making certain decisions like that, and having to manage your mana as a resource more than you have in the past, then now is a great time to try out Shaman. Now, next up is my hometown, my home team, the Mistweaver Monks. And for the most part, although you see, hundreds of changes and hundreds of buffs and nerfs to Mistweaver Monk, the playstyle in terms of the talent build is roughly the same. Well, most of it was buffing their Mythic Plus, so now one of the biggest holes in the Mistweaver experience has kind of been filled in their Mythic Plus performance, but they've also seen a lot of buffs to their backup raid playstyle. So playstyles centered around ancient teachings. They now are more incentivized to press Essence Font because it received a pretty large nerf. They now are more incentivized to take something like Feline Stomp just for its raw throughput, and Essence Font's raw throughput you get for free from Feline Stomp. So the average player that just pushes heroic raids is going to have a more enjoyable experience, not having to play this default Clouded Focus 1 minute Yu'lon ramping build that is very difficult to master. You can play a more optimized version of your backup build, the heroic build, and then even then, if your guild does push into Mythic, or if you are swapping to Mistweaver and you don't just line up, you just don't enjoy this Yu'lon ramp playstyle, you do have backup builds that are still not as good as your main build, obviously, or it wouldn't be your main build. It is the best build on almost every raid boss except for one, but you do have more options. You can swap out talents. You could play with Upwelling if you want to press Essence Font more now, or you could play with Focus Thunder if you want to focus on your Renewing Mist count more, get more AoE healing through your Vivify cleaves. But one of the biggest changes that came to Mistweaver is the square root scaling. I mean, our whole objective in raid was to get as many renewing mists out by talents like Rapid Diffusion, because whenever you summon your Yulon, which is your 1 minute cooldown, you spam Enveloping Mists. Those Enveloping Mists are going to just spawn a free Renewing Mist onto an ally for 6 seconds. And then you're going to do your Rising Sun Kick to extend all the hots that you have out, and then just spam Vivify onto a single target, and that will blast a ton of AoE healing. So in the past, in 10.1.7, ideally, you just had as many Renewing Mists out by the time that you're spamming your Vivifies. However, now you kind of do get punished in certain instances for having more Renewing Mists out. Now you're going to do less per target for each target that you have. So there is even more optimization that can go into this playstyle, but for the most part, it plays very similarly. The only question that you're going to have to ask yourself if you're returning Mistweaver is, do you want to have to optimize how many Renewing Mists you have out instead of just going for as many as you can? And if not, if you still are wanting to give Mistweaver a try in raiding, then like I said, you have backup build. You have your Ancient Teachings build. You can swap with Chi-Ji, have a Chi-Ji build, because Chi-Ji is very good in an Ancient Teachings Essence font world. And there's even one fight where Tear of Mourning is more optimal than Rising Mist, since you only have 10 targets or half the raid to heal instead of all 20 people. So basically you have options. You're not tied to the same build as you were in 10.1.7 as much as you're probably going to see on the leaderboards. You still will see this build, or a build very similar to this one, with the Cloud of Focus, the Yulon ramp, perform the best at the top levels. The top 1% will not deviate from this much. However, if you land in like the 60 parsing category or the 70 parsing category, or just push heroic, like I said, you can still play these other builds. It just will have a lower ceiling, but that ceiling is higher than it used to be. And then moving to the Mythic Plus build, it's such a blast. If you've never played Mistweaver, if you have not played a Feline Stomp Mistweaver yet, now is the time. I mean, now is the time to jump on the wave, because we are more tanky with things like Calming Presence, Bounce Back. The buffed and enhanced Expel Harm can work well with things like Bounce Back and Healing Elixir. Everything just kind of comes together to make you stay alive and survive more bursty damage, allow you to push higher keys because you're just not dying, flat out dying to boss mechanics, and you get to enjoy the playstyle that is Fistweaver or Mistweaver, Ancient Teachings, Feline Stomp more without worries. So how it works is you're going to Feline Stomp, which is just you shoot out a line. You're going to stand on that Feline because your Blackout Kicks are going to cleave. Your Tiger Palms are going to hit twice. Your Spinning Crane Kick's going to heal everyone. And on top of all of that, all of those buttons except for Spinning Crane Kick are just going to heal people from Ancient Teachings. So basically you spawn a Feline, you stand on it, and then you just press DPS buttons and you get a ton of healing from just pressing damage buttons. It's so sick. It's so unique to other healers, maybe barring Discipline Priest, but it's just a good time. And if you want to swap to Mistweaver, you want to give it a shot, you want to see what it's all about, subscribe to the channel, because that is what my channel is primarily focused on. But yeah, you basically, if you like pressing a ton of damage buttons and doing a ton of green numbers, Mistweaver is absolutely your best choice. All right, now that Mistweaver is out of the way, let's go ahead and move on to the other melee healer, and that is Holy Paladin. Now, for the most part, Holy Paladin is kind of just a gutted version of their 10.1.7 self. However, there is one major change to their playstyle, and that is their dependency. I feel wrong calling it that, but Tower of Radiance. This is a very powerful single node talent that causes your spot heals or your casted heals, Flash of Light or Holy Light, to give you a holy power. Why am I even mentioning this? Why am I starting off with this? Well, as a melee healer, you would think one of your biggest things is to just stand in melee. Well, as a Holy Paladin, they don't really have to be tied to melee anymore, because you'll see they don't really cast Crusader Strike that much at all compared to their former selves, which Crusader Strike was traditionally one of their best ways to give themselves holy power so that they can use their spenders, Light of Dawn, which is your primary one in a raid environment. So you basically, instead of staying in melee, making sure that you can reach your Crusader Strikes, you just cast Holy Light or Flash of Light instead. So you basically are just kind of like a spot heal caster now. And couple that with your Holy Shock, which is just, it literally is the shock heal. It just shock heals someone, instant cast. The power in this spell nowadays is so much stronger because your tier set works very well with it. So Holy Shock is a spot heal, a shock heal. However, it will leave behind a Glimmer of Light, which is just a hot. It has a hot tacked onto it. And then your tier set actually makes it leave behind a second hot. So you're going to shock heal, leave behind 2 hots on the ally. So they're going to be, very, very well healed. And then sometimes your Holy Shock just will not go on cooldown. And the more that you're spreading around your Holy Shock, spreading around your Glimmer of Lights, your little hots that you're applying, the more of a chance this has to happen. So you're going to get a lot of Holy Shocks out. And that does also work with things like Divine Toll, which you might not be able to see, you can see. Divine Toll also casts Holy Shocks. And then why do you need all these glimmers out? Aside from just having a lot of hots out, obviously hots are very good in a raid environment. Well, you play even more around Daybreak. Daybreak basically snaps all those Glimmer of Lights, makes them heal all their healing instantly ×2, and gives you 2,000 mana back, just moves your health bar based on how many you snapped. Now, another benefit is it also makes your next Holy Shocks cast 2 additional times, starting the cycle over. So you see a very similar playstyle that you used to, where you're just casting Holy Shock as much as you can, spreading that hot as much as you can, because Glimmer of Light existed in 10.1.7. The only real difference is your tier set now just lets you Daybreak once every 45 seconds. You'll get less mana back from Daybreak, but you're pressing it more often. You still will play around Tears Deliverance, trying to extend this, basically this hot on everyone that has it, and you still have very similar cooldowns in Avenging Wrath or a Mastery. The only, like I said, the only playstyle major shift is just how much you play around Tower of Radiance. I've seen top parses from the PTR where people had 1 or 2 or 0 Crusader Strike casts, and they only relied on Holy Light, Flash of Light for their power, their holy power regeneration. Obviously, Holy Shock also gives you holy power. Obviously, it's still mandatory for a Mistweaver to still be in melee because they need the Rising Sun Kick on cooldown. But Holy Paladins, your judgment is the one that you're still pressing, your one damaging button that you're still pressing for damage, and that one you can cast from a range. So it's a very weird time to be a Holy Paladin. However, if you enjoyed it in 10.1, it's still very powerful. I mean, you're applying a ton of hots, doing a ton of spot healing, saving lives left and right, doing good throughput and providing good raid buffs to your group. So if you've enjoyed this in the past, you're still going to enjoy it now. And then in Mythic Plus, I mean, look, I can't really harp on this enough. It still is very similar. The draw to Holy Paladin in Mythic Plus is that you are an actual Swiss Army knife. Back in 10.1.7, you had 6 cooldowns at your disposal between Aura Mastery, Avenging Wrath, Daybreak, Tears Deliverance, Divine Toll, and then in the past you had Holy Prism that just had more value because it worked with your tier set. However, now since you don't still play that old Aberrus tier set, you do lose basically this as a cooldown. This is just a throughput button now. However, you do still have the 5 other cooldowns that I just listed, and on top of that, Daybreak is now with your tier set on a 45-second cooldown, so you still can cycle cooldowns very easily, have a different cooldown for any given scenario. You provide extra damage to your party through Blessing of Summer, and provide mitigation through Light's Protection and Aura Mastery still as well. So still, there's not much that I can say. If you're a Holy Paladin truer, if you enjoyed it in 10.1.7, you still will enjoy it. I guarantee you still will enjoy it. In Mythic Plus, you don't have as much Holy Prism power, but you do have more Daybreak power, which I arguably is better. Honestly, in my opinion, it's better. But for the most part, it's just spamming Holy Shocks whenever it comes off cooldown and trying to get resets, free resets from Glorious Dawn. In Mythic Plus, you don't rely on Tower of Radiance as much. I mean, you really don't cast these spells, but it's there. It's an option. You do still cast Crusader Strike, Judgment for big damage. You stand in your consecration still. It's just the same. You always have a button for any given occasion. So if you enjoy that or have enjoyed Paladin in the past, it's still a great time to play Holy Paladin. All right, moving on to the penultimate healer. This is, if you were to ask me like a power ranking, this is my choice for just overall strength. This is Preservation Evoker is going to be very good in Mythic Plus. It's going to be solid in Raid. It's a great choice. I think every healer right now is a great choice. Some are better than others if you're just looking for raw power. And in terms of solid Raid throughput and solid Mythic Plus damage, solid Mythic Plus healing, and good Mythic Plus and Raid cooldowns, Preservation Evoker just takes the cake. I mean, it just is a very solid, well-rounded healer, and a lot of that is from your tier set. So how your tier set works is your empowered spells. So things like Dream Breath, Fire Breath, and Spirit Bloom, these are going to shoot a living flame at the target that they hit. So if your Dream Breath heals, 5 people, those 5 people are going to get hit by a small living flame. What makes that very good? Well, your tier set also says that your living flames will have a chance to apply an echo to the targets. So on the surface, that's just a big bonus in their Mythic Plus damage. I mean, your Fire Breath just does bonus damage. I mean, you're just hitting free living flames onto your enemies. But in a raid build, you're just getting free echoes. You're just applying echoes to everyone, which if you've seen Preservation Evoker in the past, you know just how strong that can be with things like Temporal Anomaly. This is a sphere that you shoot out and it passes through people applying a shield to them, but it also applies a small version of echo to the first 3 allies that it passes through. And this part of it, Resonating Sphere, was the raw power behind this spell, the reason why you would cast it for 7.5% of your base mana. Now your tier set basically says that you don't have to press this button. You don't have to rely on Temporal Anomaly anymore, because just your base kit, your Spirit Bloom and your Dream Breath do it anyways. They just apply small echoes to random party members, whoever they're going to hit. So you're getting a lot, like a ton of free healing in both Raid from these 2 AoE spells and Mythic Plus from hitting your whole party, all 5 members with both of these AoE spells. And then that makes your next global after you press either Spirit Bloom or Dream Breath very important. How do you want to use those echoes? Do you want to apply a reversion, just have a hot on everyone? Do you want to spam or cast a living flame into those allies and get a big chunk heal? How do you want to use that echo? And then once you decide, once you cash in all those echoes with whatever your next global cooldown is, you have another one. You have another empowered spell to apply even more. And then once both of these are on cooldown, then you have your Temporal Anomaly to apply more. How do you want to spend that? Another reversion? Sure. Why not? A Verdant Embrace for a massive spot heal on everyone? Sure, why not? I mean, it really provides a lot of fluidity and a lot of satisfaction through knowing that there's always a choice and an optimal choice of what button to press next. And it really does lead, in Mythic Plus at least, to an abundance in options. I mean, you always have very powerful cooldowns through Stasis, Rewind, and then also now your smaller cooldowns, your Dream Breath and your Spirit Bloom, are even more powerful. So you really do just have a wealth of options in Mythic Plus. Stasis was already a very powerful Mythic Plus cooldown, but now if you clone or you duplicate with Stasis, either your Dream Breath or your Spirit Bloom, you get it all again. So you can cast Stasis, cast Spirit Bloom, that'll heal everyone up, and you can apply echoes to a couple of people that it hits, cast Reversion, and then cash in on those echoes, and then cast Dream Breath to apply more echoes, and then cast your Stasis again to cast those last 3 spells in that order. So the Spirit Bloom will cleave off everyone and then cleave again on all the free echoes that you got from your Dream Breath, and then your Reversion will healing off all the echoes that your Spirit Bloom applied. I mean, it's just insane. It's insane. It's a very powerful, very fun playstyle and very fun tier set to play around. But in Raid, there is one major difference. With all the nerfing to Temporal Anomaly, and then also, just the opportunity cost of pressing Temporal Anomaly being lower, they've had to lean on other options of healing, and that is with their Emerald Blossoms. Emerald Blossom is that round circle that they place down that pops after like a second or two, and it does AoE healing, and you can just spam these for nice, solid, chunky AoE heals during all the downtime of your Spirit Bloom, Dream Breath being on cooldown. So it just leads to a ton of healing, a ton of AoE healing. It makes Preservation Evoker as good of a healer as they were back in, buffed temporal anomaly days. So highly recommend giving this a shot, at least as one of your alts, because the playstyle is super fluid. You always have a button to press, one of your empowered spells, and then one of your non-empowered spells to benefit off of those echoes. And then one of your empowered spells, one of your non-empowered spells. So if you like the sound of that, like the sound of how powerful this tier set and how fun this tier set is, then definitely give Preservation a shot. And finally, let's move on to Restoration Druid, one of my favorite healing specs. Now, if you played in 10.1.7 Restoration Druid, you know that there was a lot of power around their 1.5 minute cooldown, Flourish. They basically would ramp up every 1.5 minutes and then press Flourish so that all their hots would just go super fast, heal a ton, bada bing, bada boom. However, they have taken a lot of power out of this playstyle. If you liked the ramping playstyle of Druid, then I would recommend Discipline Priest or Mistweaver Monk, since they still are very solid ramping healers that do benefit a lot from their ramping playstyle. However, Restoration Druid has kind of moved back to their former identity of just being the solid throughput, constant throughput healer, getting a lot of AoE healing out. Now, a lot of that power is still from things like Wild Growth, doing a lot of healing. Things like Rejuve spamming is still going to be a priority for you. If you don't like Rejuve spamming, it's still not a good time to play Restoration Druid. However, if you do like it, if you do find it satisfying, it's still a great time to play, and it's even better than it used to be because you now have a completely different thing that you play around, and that is your Grove Guardians. Now, this isn't a major cooldown. Like I said, you aren't, your big, rampy, bursty, healy self. However, this is a little minion that you spawn next to, and it'll just cast heals. It'll cast a Wild Growth and a Swift Mend when you spawn it for a spot heal and a good AoE heal, and then just spam Nourishes while it's out for its duration. This has 3 charges, and they're on a low cooldown, so you can spam all 3 of them at once if you need some bigger heals all at once. It's still not quite the same power as the former Flourish, but it's still good, bursty healing that you can do with all 3 of these out. However, you could just spawn them one at a time. You have freedom of choice with this cooldown. And that's even stronger with how it works with Incarnation Tree of Life. Now, you've probably seen Tree of Life in the past. All it is you become a tree. You're just a tree version of yourself, and it buffs all of your heals. So it makes your Rejuves cost less mana, your Wild Growths hit more targets, your Regrowths instant cast, and your Wraths also instant cast. So you can just go into Tree of Life, all of your Wild Growths are going to hit more targets, all your Rejuves are going to just be more mana efficient. It's just makes you a more powerful version, throughput version of yourself, where it gains synergy with Grove Guardians is when you take Cenaria's Guidance, which says during your Tree of Life, you're going to spawn a treant every 10 seconds. So during your normal Tree of Life that lasts 30 seconds, you're going to spawn 3 free treants doing more throughput. But every single time that your Grove Guardian fades, it'll reduce the cooldown of your Tree of Life. So you get a lot more Tree of Life uptime, just increasing your overall throughput. You get a lot of free Grove Guardians, so increasing your overall throughput, your steady throughput. And then on top of that, Reforestation, every 3 Swift Mends that you cast will just put you into a free Tree of Life form. A lot like how Shamans are going to be put into their Ascendancy and Holy Priests are going to be put into their Apotheosis for free, you do something very similar. So you do play around these cooldowns a lot more than like your Tranquility, for example. The good thing about this, though, if you're not a fan of Rejuve spam, is that you just always have something to do, and you're always going to have a friend to talk to in your Grove Guardians. They're fun little guys that just like to sit there and dance. So if you like this Grove Guardian playstyle, if you like having basically a pet playstyle, having other people basically help you out with the healing, then Resto Druid is kind of the only class that is doing that right now. They are the new Fallen Order monks, is the Grove Guardian. So if you enjoy this playstyle, then now is a great time for Resto Druids. However, in Mythic Plus, you combine that strength of Grove Guardians with the strength of Convoke the Spirits. So they still play Convoke the Spirits, which is just a very solid cooldown, especially in a Mythic Plus environment. So what your playstyle is going to be like is you're still going to cast all the same Druid spells. You're going to apply an Efflorescence as soon as the pack starts. You're going to Life Bloom your tank, spread Rejuves on everyone in the party, Wild Growth everyone in the party, maybe cast Flourish to extend all those hots, and then rely on your dots to do most of the damage. So you do have great tank healing, great tank survivability. utility in Ironbark and Cenarian Ward, just a very powerful single target hot. You do have a lot of AoE healing with Wild Growth and all the hots that you're allowed to blanket onto the entire group. And then you still have Grove Guardians to do some healing while you do the damage if you want to squeeze in some damaging global cooldowns. So if that sounds like a playstyle that you enjoy playing around these pets, then Resto Druid is a great option for you, and it's a very fun time to play Resto Druid. So there you have it. I'm really gonna have to edit this one down because I know I talked for a long time, but I am so glad to be back, and I'm so excited now that 10.2 is finally out. It feels like I've been waiting forever for this. What healer do you think you're gonna play? Did I help you make your decision at all with this video? Let me know in the comments below. Also, I'm gonna take a quick moment to shout out to the Patreons. These guys are absolutely carrying this channel and carrying me further into my dreams of being a full-time content creator. Thank you so much if your name is on the screen right now. I really appreciate all the support to the channel and to me, myself. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much if your name is on the screen. And if you wanna join them, check out the link down in the description below. It is the best way to support this channel. So make sure and check that out. And make sure you click the like and subscribe button while you're down there, because you know that games the YouTube algorithm, tricks the algorithm, and helps me on my way to becoming a full-time YouTuber. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you guys took away some valuable information, maybe just some knowledge about how different healers are gonna work in 10.2 from this video. But that's gonna do it for this one. I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, take care.